And we hope you have been enjoying the show so far. My name is Stephanie Gondwe. And of course, today we'll be talking a little bit about the inflation rate as of June 2026. Now, according to the latest data in Zambia's annual inflation rate for June 2026 has eased from 6.5%, down slightly from 6.6% recorded in May. While the decline may appear small, economists say every moment in inflation can have important implications for the cost of living, business operations, investments, and overall health of the economy. To help us understand this today, of course, in studio with me, we have Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, who is an economist, and he'll be getting to give us a few insights on what it is that we'll be discussing today. Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, good morning.
Morning. Thank you so much, Stefan.
Thank you for having coming through to our studio today. How are you doing?
My
How's the
pleasure.
Friday?
I'm good. Friday's just going on well. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, Mr. Kelvin, I do have a few questions for you, of course, and we'd like to ask you. The annual rate has dropped from 6.5%, from 6.6%, dropped to 6.5% from 6.6% inflation rate from the month of May to June. What do these figures tell us about the current state of Zambia's economy?
Okay, so the drop tells us a positive, significant economic update, which is giving a positive feeling of some sort, meaning we are still stabilizing, we are still going with a pattern of disinflation, meaning we can now create a good expectation on pricing effect. If you are to maybe just get into also the level of expectation, meaning we can now predict our pricing range for some of the items at household level.
Okay.
Then for the business out there also, it means we are anchoring an expectation of a proper way in which we can plan for business. And again, it also helps to gauge how the current economic managers are so performing from that end, meaning the office orders out there, they will be able to know that this is how they are moving in terms of measuring their governance pattern, their economic management system and all that. So it's basically also just create a good expectation for a business and the cost of doing business as well. When inflation is totaling downward, it means we'll not be able to jump the prices. Okay. We'll not be able to touch on the cost of borrowing. Because again, if inflation is going upward, the Bank of Zambia will come down and start setting the monetary policy rate upward to combat or to curb that inflation. So in the case now, it will stabilize, meaning the next set of sitting that MPC will be able to look at, they will not be able to say, can we trigger upward the monetary policy rate? And again, that also creates a good atmosphere as well for businesses as well, because what will happen in the case that if you want to land production, we will not be able to see the cost of capital stock, scaling or getting to be elevated. And maybe just one way I can also mention here is that inflation is an important aspect. It's a measuring tape on how we are working out a lot of key fundamentals, much more even mirroring how our forex market is behaving from there, because of course the forex market in the Zambian case has a very aggressive inflation generating aspect. So if we have inflation that is moderating like this, it means the economy is healing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Now, for those of us that are not economists, for lack of a better, would like you to use now the layman's language for my viewers who may, not fully understand what inflation may be. Can you explain what it practically means for households and for consumers out there?
Okay, thank you so much, Stefan, for that question. Maybe the best context can be if we look at the cost of pricing for mini meal. At some point, we were even buying at 330 kwacha, yes, or maybe 350.
Yes.
But today, because inflation has been coming down, and much of what I can say is that food inflation during the harvest period has been playing a largest weight on the inflation pattern. And what we have seen is that mini meal now is selling at 175, 200, 230. So that is the work of inflation to drop down some of the items that we basically acquire at household level. Then not only that, also when you look at the developmental patterns of inflation, what we basically also look at it a situation where if I buy the item today at this price 175, it means it will stay a bit longer on that 175 because inflation is the rate at which the costs or the price of items are moving at. So meaning we won't be able to see any rapid speed with the items that we buy. So it gives that inflation expectation to say what we are basically working out is the situation where we are trying to hold the pricing for a bit longer without changing, which means it will now help you to have disposable income at household level.
Okay.
You will not be able to spend or stretch a bit. It will be able to give you that shape of saying, if I buy this item today at 75 kwacha, even next week it will still be at 75 kwacha because inflation is holding that.
Okay.
So that's what inflation works out. It does not mean that the goods and items should automatically drop. It means it gives you an expectation on how you should be able to hold the hopes around the pricing on some of the items, those that are quite critical and essential at household level. So that's what actually plays out from there.
Lovely. So at least now we know that we just need to be a bit more patient with that, eh? In
Yes, so
short.
the other part is that when inflation is going the other side, where it's maybe going upward, it becomes a tax to a poor man.
Right.
Because the money that you have reserved, for example, if you buy an item today at 75 kwacha, tomorrow you find at 80 kwacha, the other day it's 100 kwacha, meaning you are paying tax indirectly through that. So inflation in simple terms, that it's a poor man's tax. But if it's going the other way, where it's going positively downward, it saves money because you won't be able to stretch. Whatever you have kept, whatever you have planned, it will work within that budget cycle.
Right. So, you mentioned about meal prices going down and some of these other goods going down due to the inflation rates. And now for those that think that these are usually politically aligned, maybe you can just explain what factors could have contributed to the decline of inflation this month.
Okay, so we understand pretty very well that inflation has got different components that are involved there. We've got what we call non-inflation, where we're talking about the exchange market, we're talking about fuel. Those are basically non-food inflation aspect that are also sitting on the table.
Right.
And some can also be complementary policies from the government. So inflation in its own composition, it's got a lot of things, but in the Zambian case, the biggest component which sits in the inflation at 55%, it's food.
Okay.
So whenever we have a positive harvest production of this kind, where we are talking of almost nearly 5 million metric tons of production, that has given birth to the positive element that we're able to see, where we are basically seeing things working out from that perspective, meaning the heaviest weight in the basket, it's actually food. We've seen cereals coming down, like I mentioned, of maize. We've seen cooking oil also coming down. You can even find cooking oil which used to buy at 250 for 170, 180, somewhere there. So those are things that are, even when you look at the eggs, we used to buy eggs at somewhere like 80, almost nearly 100 kwacha. But now we can find at 65, 70. So that's what basically plays out from that basis of inflation. So the food component occupies a largest weight. So when we are seeing what is happening, we simply now conclude to say inflation is being fed by harvest.
Awesome. And to what extent does the government policy, can we credit rather the government policies for the reduction in inflation rate, and what measures should continue to sustain this progress?
Okay, so as I mentioned, the issue to measure the performance of government official, inflation is part of the parameter. Maybe even to some extent, I would even put to say reserves, performance of the currency. A lot of these economic, variables, they are being used to measure how they are performing.
Okay.
So now, coming to your question, I think I would say the inflation component basically plays a very critical element in trying to make sure things work out from that basis, especially when you know that food is something that is very important. So knowing that we've got this positive productive output of agriculture with so many crop diversity mixed in the pack, we need to contain some good measures after post-harvest, or rather post-harvest measures should be very well thought through, because we should not just go lash into export market when we know that next year we have some challenges with weather. So meaning, if we do not contain strong measures around export, we can trigger inflation upward.
Right.
Obviously, for some good reasons. So to maintain this, we need also to do value addition. We need also to look at export diversification, because inflation, as I mentioned, it comes from different angles.
Right.
If we basically have a situation where we have tumbled with copper production, and the price has also tumbled, then we can also trigger inflation, because part of what is happening here is the exchange market, which is supporting inflation. Because the way it is with the Zambia's foreign market fundamentals, sometimes we also import inflation.
Right.
So if the export becomes quite stronger than the import, then we know that we are containing inflation. But if the import becomes stronger than the export, then we start triggering inflation. Right. So that's what it works out. So we need to make that balanced scale around the import and export process as well. And much to this also, I think we need to look at local processing of some of the items, like agriculture products, mining products, and we need to also ensure that we keep checking what's happening also with regards to some of the emerging events, because inflation also can be triggered with the geopolitical tension, like the way it happened in the Middle East. It means we'll not be able to have a smooth flow of oil and the petrochemical product into the country, meaning we'll start triggering inflation from that end. Right. So it's also to monitor the kwacha's performance, to monitor the exchange market from maybe a basis of commerce, where we should also make sure that things are put in shape. So it's involving, it's a complex matter.
Now, how does the Zambian current inflation rate compare with other countries in the region, and what does this say about our performance?
Well, Zambia's been recording recovery stabilization, which is very, very important. And obviously what we are seeing now is that even despite being in active campaign period, key fundamentals are still holding very tightly. Maybe we just have also to see that we look at a strong link in between the strong macroeconomic variables and the community ground effect, because that is where there is a bit of the speciality. We do not see the positive development happening on the ground. That's the reason why the cost of living still holding up there. Even if it's happened in that case, maybe the consideration can be, as we hold a bit longer with what is happening, and also we contain the environment with the non-aggressive sentiment from political undertones, that can actually be able to work out in a perfect order. And we just hope that election can be free and fair. Yeah. If those can actually work out, I think we should be able to say that Zambia is standing tall. Because again, if you look at the landscape, we are still maintain the second position in copper production. We're still doing very well on currency. Sometimes last week we had recorded the highest mark in terms of performance on the currency. Yes. So this combination of different factors have also played a very critical role, which is standing significantly for attracting investment and of course trying to position Zambia on the world map. Right now Zambia's got a lot of good policy medicine, trying to remedy some of the challenges that we actually had at some point. And you can imagine turning from crisis to stability, and even now to good news, to good announcement. So that already is revibrating the market, meaning we can have more investors to flock into this country once we get to even now stabilize with election or electoral economics. Once we get to have that, I think it will be able to speak a better attracting position and platform. As we speak right now, Zambia is being monitored, even when it comes to the maturity of democracy.
Yes.
Once we underscore that one, I can assure you, in the next 2 or 3 years to come, Zambia will be shining.
Lovely.
Yes.
So, and on that positive note, in conclusion, just one sentence from you as to what is the most important thing the average Zambian should understand about the inflation rate from June of 6.5.
Okay, so this is meaning to say the speed at which items are moving, it's slower, which is actually 6.5%. Imagine the way it was moving at 16%. So it's just like when you're driving a vehicle.
Yes.
If you are driving at 6 kilometers per hour,
Yes.
it's a slow speed compared to 16 kilometers per hour. So what is happening right now is something that is very important. Going with this inflation trend, it's important in the sense that it's giving you a lot of hope to say, even tomorrow or the other day or next week or even next month, we'll still maintain the pricing of items despite having the cost of living, but the prices are being held to a position where you have an expectation to meet, and it won't be able to do some bit of changes. So meaning, even when I buy an item today, I will still expect it to be within that range. If there will be any change, maybe it's a 2 kwacha, 1 kwacha. So again, also just to the overall Zambian stakeholders, I think agriculture has proven a test to this stabilization, meaning the true success of Zambia's economy relies on the agriculture. Because agriculture, just from February to somewhere like August, it has been doing very well. And we hope to see things working in perfect order after elections as well. And we believe that agriculture should be also one of the key baseline, just like the way we regard mining, because that has also given shape to what we are seeing. So agriculture has been a good factor to actually look when we are looking at inflation and looking at exchange market, because a lot of things with agriculture has changed. So that tells you a good story. But now we need to work on electricity issues. We need to work on other factors, even when it comes to tourism, and much more now to go into value addition in all sectors of the economy. That will change the narrative, and we'll have high levels of employment from there.
Lovely.
So Zambia's got resourceful base. So let's drive it. And this country is, I don't know, this country is very nice country. We don't see. And what I would also leave with this to everyone is that Zambia is a rich country.
Yes.
And it's only us and leadership that fails this country. Otherwise, if we ought to drive efforts, we can turn this country to something better, even much more better than the overseas countries.
Absolutely, and that is a challenge to you and I to, in the president's words, buy tractors and not BMWs. That was Mr. Calvin Chis.